Hello, it's Glenn here, Glen Campbell with the collective. I lead the conscious leadership side inside the collective. And for me, of course, my focus is on leaders, and my focus is today on Steve X. McNamara. And this guy is a leader, right? I mean, he's an extraordinary leader. I've been following him and what he's been up to. And that's why we're here talking to Steve today. We want to find out a bit about what impact Steve is making on himself and on the community that he focuses on, which of course is going to energetically, in that beautiful ripple effect, it's going to impact the planet. It's going to impact the cosmos, the universe. That's what happens. If you know anything about quantum physics, you'll know that that's the way it works, right? And so one guy, one person, one woman can make a dramatic impact on a lot of people just by stepping up, focusing on their passion and doing their work. And so, Steve, what is your focus? What is your passion? Introduce us to yourself. Tell us a bit about who you are and what you're on about.
First and foremost, thank you for having me on, and I'm excited about this interview. When you were saying before we recorded that this is going to be free flow, and we're just going to roll with it and nothing's off the table, I'm like, that's my style, because that's the way I show up in the world. There's no bullshit. If there is, I always take responsibility and get to work on it myself to clear my own bullshit, and I go out and keep at it. So yeah, where do I start? The first thing, my passions. You mentioned passions. One thing I'm extremely passionate about is helping others. Now, it's not the first and foremost thing of my passions, but I absolutely love it. And that's come definitely from my own journey, a background of drugs, alcohol, violence, unhealthiness, all the things, whilst holding down a very high pressure, high position job, which I'm sure you could probably resonate with as well. But my path of, like, you could say, self-discovery or awakening or anything really led me into helping people. And I didn't know I was on the planet to help people until I actually got my own shit sorted and realized that I could make an impact. I've been on this journey.
Pretty hard to help other people if you can't help yourself, right, Steve?
100%. But I wasn't even aware. I didn't get into like coaching and everything. I didn't even know what a coach was. I'm a coach now. You could put me on the level. I had no idea. I thought a coach was a dude that, like, I played Aussie rules for many, many years. I'm like, my coach is the dude who has the clipboard and tells us what to do and gives us a rah-rah or everything. I thought that was the coach. So I had no idea about like a personal growth coach or anything like that, or a life coach, until I was at a real pain point for me where I was asking big questions like, what am I on the planet for? I have no idea why I'm here. I'm unfulfilled. I'm unhappy. I'm lost and lonely.
Those primordial questions that have plagued humanity for time immemorial. Who am I and why am I here? We know the vast majority of people on the planet still can't answer that, or they answer it and say, I'm a plumber, or I'm a bricklayer, or I'm a psychologist, or I'm a lawyer. You're not. That's not who you are, right?
100%. And I think it's relevant. I'll say the time when I actually asked that question. I was working in the mines in the Pilbara in WA. I loved a huge part of that. I really did. I loved staying away. The fishing was exceptional up there. I didn't have to answer to anyone. I was a single guy. So there was some great stuff to it. But at the same time, I used to lock myself in the room every night and be depressed and down and go, all right, I'll just do it again tomorrow. Here we go again. Get up, go to work. And one day I got up and went to work, and we're driving in between a really outback camp, like really deep in the Pilbara, into Karratha, where there was phone service. I didn't have phone service for a lot of the time. And when I got into phone service, received a phone call from my then boss, a really good man, like an older version of myself at the time. That's why I got along with him well. And he's like, hey, just want to let you know that the other supervisor, who was a very good mate of mine, has committed suicide. They found him in his room this morning on another camp. And that cracked me open instantly. Now, I didn't go into grief or anything. I had a lot of emotion come up, and it was like this moment where I was like standing. I'd walked into the middle of a Spinifex paddock. I was blank, because I was like, this was shocking and unexpected. But I walked there and I hung up the phone. I had tears coming down my face, and I'm pretty sure I went like this. I'm like, is this my time? Like, is this my time? Like, why am I still in the mines? Why am I still living this life? Like, I'm unhappy. I'm not that there. I've just lost my mate. Why am I on the planet? And that came out of that shock or that grief. And and I asked that question. It was really interesting when I asked that question. Now, I didn't get an answer. It's not what I did it for. It was like this, whatever I put out to the universe at that time. And I did process this really well with my really good mate. It was a tough thing to take. I'm looking after a big crew. Brought up a lot of stuff for them. They were mates and all that sort of thing. But for me, the process wasn't this depressing down one. I'd ask the question, why am I on the planet? And all of a sudden, I started getting all these signs. Across the next 2 years, a video would pop up on my phone. I wasn't big in social media, but something really resonate with me would pop up. A conversation, something would come in there and it'd plant a seed in my head. Well, I can do something else other than be like this mining supervisor and all this. I can go and choose to live my own life. Or there's all these signs happen for 2 years. Now, I didn't have the courage at the time to say leave the mines. Good income, good pay. I got big results, great reputation, shitty reputation with my anger, but that's another story. But there was a huge part of me that liked that. But since I asked that question, what am I on the planet for? All these things led me to finally see another mate of mine who had been through some relationship stuff posting on social media. Who would have thought social media can be our friend? But posting on social media, like doing this thing in Bali, he's climbing a volcano, he's talking about his feelings, he's talking about getting his life sorted. And I was like, number one, like a mate of mine, I thought he had his shit together, number one. Number two, he's talking about his feelings and that on Facebook. Whoa, that's hardcore. But deep down, I'm like, I want to know what he's doing because I needed something for my own stuff. Again, I'd ask the question, why am I on the planet? Getting all these signs that I started like awakening to there was something more for me here.
But now, can I just stop you there, because I think this is
yeah.
really important for people watching this video to know this. You asked the universe, you asked the field of all knowingness, of all potentiality, you asked, and then you started getting answers and you noticed it, right? Now, it doesn't kind of really matter whether you acted on it, which you really did, you got to it.
Eventually, yeah.
But you asked, right? Now, this is classic quantum physics, right? This is classic spirituality we're talking about here. You asked and you started getting answers and you were noticing. This is really important for people to know, because a lot of people don't ask. They think they're victims. They think they're stuck. They think they go into this state of hopelessness. They think there's no way out. Well, they're not asking, and they're not asking. Then you've got to be open enough to say, I'm open enough to actually listen to things that, the signs, what comes my way, what, makes its way to me, and be awake enough to say, well, that's really interesting. Where'd that come from? That video or that person or that, whatever happens, right? Keep going with the story. This is great.
It's really good. I always go like, we've always got signs around us, always. But are we aware that they are signs?
Yes, correct.
And that's
you've got to be aware. You've got to be aware. And so it's not just self-awareness. I spend a lot of time talking, in my conscious leadership programs and my work, talking about, one of the first cornerstones of leadership is self-awareness. Who am I and why am I here? Who am I really? Not as some lesser version of this three-dimensional matrix we live in, but who is my true higher source self, whatever source is, whatever you believe God is, or creator, prime source creator, whatever that is, right? To whatever that is to you. But who am I? Because I'm a divine spark of that. And, I am unbelievable. I'm magnificent. So what does that look like, And it's not until you went on that journey, you're telling me about the journey, right, that you went on. And I want to keep going with this story because I love the story. But it's this idea of saying, asking the question and being open to the signs, being open to the answers, keeping, this. And now we're talking from self-awareness to kind of environmental awareness, social awareness, and looking and seeing and being able to interpret, decode these things.
Yeah, it's a good breakdown of it too. And like when I'm asking, there's a difference. You mentioned the victimhood when we're asking, like we're saying a prayer. Now, I'm not religious, but I believe in prayer. It's an intention. But if you're setting an intention or asking for something, it's not coming from poor me, poor me. At this time, I'm like, this is something, what the fuck am I here for? It was like intense to the universe. And I'm like, I'm ready. Even though I And my brain's like, no, you're not. No, you're not. No, but that's what it is. So if anyone, like viewers and listening, you're like, but I've been asking. What's your state like? What energy are you coming from? Because what you're creating in the quantum field is going to be a vibrational match. If you're coming from victimhood, you're probably going to get another challenge, and then another challenge, and another challenge. Yes, it's going to give you what you asked for, but you're going to have to keep overcoming these huge challenges until you raise your vibration here in the 3D, if you want to put it that way. And at least when you're sitting there, like, all right, cool. I know there's a bunch of shit going on in my life. I'm not happy. I'm not this, but you know what? I'm ready. So your energy is like, I feel like whatever I'm asking for,
I'm open. And,
I'm open,
let me just expand on what you just said there, because you were talking about quantum physics, and this is classic quantum theory. And so quantum theory is this, just to explain this a bit more from a classical sense. Quantum physics has taught us this: everything is energy. You, me, the chair you're sitting on, everything in this universe is energy. It is a field of consciousness energy, right? And one of the other principles of one of the other laws of quantum physics is like energy attracts like energy, which you were just saying. So if I'm being the victim, if I'm going to operate in scarcity, if I'm going to operate in, any of these low vibrational energies like anger or resentment or shame or blame or whatever, this is the energy I'm attracting into my life, right? But you weren't talking about that. You were talking about being open and saying, I've asked the question, I'm open. What's in store for me? And so what happens? Because your energy is up, you start attracting these things that are actually like energy. The good stuff is going to start appearing. Now, it might appear as a bit of a challenge, but the challenge is there for you to take up and say, I can move through this in a higher state of energy and start to explore the possibilities of who I am and what I'm capable of being. Is that true?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, that resonates definitely. And it's like the challenges appear when we're ready. It's like the mentor or the master appears when we're ready on the hero's journey. It's like even in one of the NLP models, like these emotions come to the surface when they're ready to be released or healed. So we're always getting the signs that we're ready. But again, this thing generally can get in the way, and our stuff and our past stuff. But for me, it was I was putting, even if they were small steps, if something appeared, I'm like, I'm going to get curious. And that's what I was doing. Like even for me to reach out to my mate, all I did was I sent him a message like, well done on that. That was courageous as. But I'm pretty sure my energy said, help. You've appeared for me and I want to know what you're doing. Because then what happened next? Like, it was a bit random. Like, his wife, who I never used to get along with, now we're great friends, messaged me. I'm like, this is weird. But she messaged me, said, oh, we've got a big event on the Gold Coast. I was in Cairns, like, you should come down. And I was like in this place, like, what the fuck's going on? Like, I don't know. This was some network marketing event. I didn't even know what network marketing was. I didn't ask for this, but I trusted. I'm like, all right. Yep, send me the stuff. I send you some money. I had a bunch of cash at the time because I was in a great paying job in the mines. Like, there's your $800. I'll drive down from Cairns and I'll take the kayak and the fishing rods because I don't know about this. Like, I need to escape. But I went down to this event, and it was nothing that was said at the event. It was nothing that they presented. It was nothing they sold or anything. But I was so friggin' uncomfortable. Around about 6,000 people were there. Happy, energetic, vibrant, smiling. And I was the opposite of the time. I was petrified of other humans. Even though in my supervisor role, I was doing pre-starts for 100 people and running big jobs, that was my safety. Going to that event was hardcore. Now, I met my then first coach, then a great friend who spoke on stage, and I met her there. I met the CEO of the company. I was finding myself at this event in the most uncomfortable positions, no idea what I was doing. And these people could feel that, and they were just so like welcoming and open. I'm like, what is this realm? What is this world? I'm used to being judged and all this, but and I remember driving away from that event. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't have to be anywhere. I was like on a break from work. I could do whatever I want. A lot of people are like, oh, you've got freedom. Yeah, I might have on the outside, but I was like, inside, I was a mess. But I drove away after 3 days at this event. So they invited me to the leadership band. I'm like, no bloody way. I've had enough. I'm about to crack because I just had so much emotion coming up. I remember driving out towards Toowoomba. Don't know why I was going there. I stopped on the side of the road, and I remember writing probably my first bit of I wrote a thank you gratitude post on Facebook. I never did that shit. But I'm like, well, these guys play on Facebook. I better put something out there because I've got so much emotion. I just put a gratitude to my friends and that invited me. I'm like, I don't know what this means, but I know this is life-changing. And that night, I never cried so much. I got a dodgy hotel room. Just needed somewhere to sit and be with myself. And that was the start of like the real start of me like diving into this journey of not just being curious and just asking little questions. Everything kept presenting to me, and so much it was uncomfortable. So much of it was brand new. So much had me bringing up so much emotion, but I did what I've always done. Like even in my working career, I'm like, I don't know what to do. Who's done this before? All right, cool. All right, I'm going to pay them to help me. Like it's coaching. If you want a shortcut, it's 101, I reckon. Get the shortcut from someone who's got the strategy, but I've got the energy and the results. That's what I started doing. And I haven't stopped doing that. A lot of it's been challenging and confronting, but holy crap, the results have been phenomenal. And at the end of the day, I started by saying the one thing that I'm passionate about is helping people. It has enabled me to help a lot of people. And again, I didn't know that day driving away from that event, but I think I realized that I could help a lot of people. That's what I think. I had the realization, like maybe my past, my drugs, my alcohol, my getting over them as an addiction, my loneliness, my unhappiness, all these things, like my anger. Like maybe there's a pathway where I can like heal from this and work through this, and then be able to help people from that. And that's what I've done. So yeah.
So there's a couple of things there that I want to kind of focus on and bring to the attention of everybody that's watching this, and that is number one. You sought out people, coaches. I'm sure you found the right ones. You know the dodgy ones. There's plenty of those out there.
My first one ended up being dodgy, but I got everything I needed out of that.
That's right.
Perfect. It was perfect.
It comes, right? It comes. I mean, you know, when the student is ready, the teacher arrives, is what you said a moment ago. The mentor arrives, and so you do. There's a lot of really good coaches out there. That's number one. You talked about finding coaches and paying them to help you. And so, you know, I can tell you now, I coach a lot of people around leadership, a lot of people around business, strategy, branding, all that kind of stuff. Do I have any coaches? I pay 3. I've got 3 that mentor me constantly. So I'm constantly exploring and saying, you know, I need help. Now, I've got one guy who is a Hawaiian shaman. I've got another woman who is a multi-dimensional shaman. And I've got a mentor around quantum physics and spirituality. He calls it SQ, by the way, spiritual intelligence. You know, a lot of people have talked about EQ, emotional intelligence, or IQ, you know, the intellect. He says this is SQ, spiritual intelligence. Now, I pay him a lot of money to help me to understand this more and more and more. And you would say, oh, but you coach so many people, you don't need it. Oh, yes, I do. And I'm prepared to pay them what they ask me to do the work, right? I don't expect anything for free. People need to be paid. And they've got lifestyles to live, and they've got incredible expertise, right? And so that's important to do that. And so what was the second point that you mentioned? Let's come back to that. Let's keep going with your story. But now, where are you now? Because you were talking about saying, oh, no, the second point was you've got all this experience through these challenges that you've had, right, where you've found your way through the alcoholism, through the anger, through the confrontation and the violence, and then you know how to share your wisdom, because you know what? Intelligence applied to experience equals wisdom. That's the only way you get wisdom. Applying what you've learnt to your life, getting the experience, and then having wisdom. And so you started sharing your wisdom around these things to help people. Where did that lead you?
Well, where did it lead me? I've had a path where there's been lots of steps on that. And of course, I've got a good word that I love, embodiment. So embodiment meaning I've applied the tools, I've applied the learnings, I've applied that, and then I've applied them to other challenges that have come through to learn the lesson, and so on and so forth. And it led me into coaching. Again, I didn't know what a coach was until I signed up to a coach and then went to a retreat, and I'm like, holy crap, this is the bomb. And again, I was like, I can do this. I love leading. I already love leading. I was a supervisor at 21. If I wasn't in charge, I got shitty. And I know a lot of it was unhealthy, but I needed to be upfront and telling people not what to do just from afar and separate. I wanted to be in it and do it with them while I was the boss. So I found, I'm like, well, maybe there's a bit of an answer to my question. What am I on the planet to do? I'm like, holy crap, I can do this. And I was like, this shit's easy. Little did I know dealing with humans is another whole beast altogether. I love humans, by the way, but holy shit. And that's where the embodiment comes in too. Like, to be able to work with humans, I found really quick, we are dealing with emotions. We're dealing with different models of the world, different realities, where we're dealing with different circumstances and that, and we can have understanding. It doesn't mean we know what people have gone through and that. And the only way I could really serve people better on this whole journey, and I'm still a student every day, like still a student, still open to learning, and that I absolutely don't know it all. I get presented with surprises every now and then with some clients. I'm like, holy fuck, how do I deal with this shit? But the only way I can deal with most of it is like, I've got to have the embodiment. I've got to practice what I preach. I've got to have applied and got results of what I did. So what I did on my journey, I'm like, I definitely didn't get everything right, but I learned early on that the best way to learn was probably to teach. So I started doing a few videos, a few webinars as a coach, and I'm like, rough as guts. But I was new. It's like, this is a new thing. And by teaching people and running little courses and that, and I was basically helping people where I was 6 months ago. And it was actually a lot easier than I thought. People just wanted to know, well, how did you overcome them addictions like 10 years ago? But how did you overcome it? Like, how did you become a coach in like a year and all this? That were the questions. And I'm like, all I needed to do was share what I'd done. And I was just teaching from that place. And of course, it's the more body of work that I've done, the more I've healed and released and applied and grown, the greater my body of work has grown to be able to serve on a greater capacity.
Now you've focused in on men, haven't you?
It's fascinating. I love helping men. That is my mission, my purpose. I've probably worked with more women over the years. I feel where women have been at, you can call it in consciousness, or where they've opened up to the work first to be able to be supportive of the men as we dive further into this journey. But women really resonated with my journey and what I was able to do, and how grounded I could be supporting them, and how they felt, even though I'm a hard ass. It's fascinating how the women have trusted me more than the men with my coaching style and that. But I do love helping men. I have a big focus on men more than ever now. I don't promote or market to women. Doesn't mean I don't help them. They still reach out. But
no, that's a good thing to know, because if women do feel an energetic connection with you, they're welcome. That's a good thing.
100%. And I got really strong boundaries around it.
Yep.
Off the back of learning some lessons, working with female clients where boundaries have been crossed. But again, that was always my responsibility. And it's funny how the coaching game has taught me some lessons I would have never learned out in the rest of the world.
You know, on that point, I want to share a little story. I think I mentioned in one of our conversations that I did martial arts. I did martial arts for 17 years. It was called Zendo Kai Karate. Bob Jones led that style. And I did that for a long time. And I kind of went through the ranks, up through the belts, and got my second Dan black belt, which was the Warriors grading, 32-minute rounds against a fresh black belt each round with no break in between. And if you're still standing at the end, you get the belt, right? And so, and I was not only standing at the end, but I was awarded Grand Nidan Champion. Now, once you get beyond the second Dan black belt, you can move into, in the style, you can open up your own dojo and start teaching. I can honestly say that I didn't really start learning the nuances of the style until I had to teach it. It became a whole new learning. It's like, I've got to actually share the experiences of what I've learned with all of these people in front of me in a way that they actually believe me, and I'm actually speaking the truth, and it works, right? And so it kind of made me go into a deeper understanding of what I was actually doing, rather than the more mechanical nature of just being able to throw a good kick or a good punch, or, know how people moves, or whatever that was, right? And so whilst I was pretty good at what I'd learnt so far, it became a whole new different game when I stood out the front and I started teaching it, because the teacher learns from the student. It's the other way around. When the student is ready, the teacher arrives, but when the teacher teaches the student, the teacher learns from the student. Because I was being asked questions about what we were doing, and I was going, I have never really even thought about that. What I mean? It's like, let me come back to you with an answer on that one. And so I had to go and find out, right? And so my growth, and I'm sure this happened to you as a coach, you were just talking about it, that's why I tell the story. Your growth started to happen when you were, actually saying to people, I'm here to help you. And then all of a sudden people are asking you questions, you're going, well, hold on a minute. Let me think about that. Let me share with you my experience, and let's navigate this thing together, right? And how to find solutions to this, And so, it's a really important, I think it's interesting for a lot of people to know this. Number one, that they are capable of being a coach or sharing their experiences to help other people. And number two, they've got to be open enough to say, I'm not the purveyor of all wisdom, and that I'm learning on this journey as well, right? And be vulnerable enough to do that.
Yeah, and vulnerability is king. That's what I've learned on this journey. The more vulnerable you are, even with clients and stuff. I know opening retreats, I run a lot of retreats. I don't really resonate with the label retreat now, because I think it implies running away. But for everyone listening, like a retreat, I've run and facilitated a lot of them. And I learned straight away from the first one I attended. The coach and the facilitators were telling vulnerable stories to start. Now, little did I know on that event that they were doing that so we could come into rapport and we could be like, wow, this person's human and that. But every retreat since then, I always set the intention that I would start and tell a story that I don't think I've really dived into in public before. So I was still pushing myself to be uncomfortable at each event. Now I'm running out of stories. But there's more challenges that I've overcome, especially in the last couple of years with all the rubbish lockdowns and all that sort of stuff. New challenges have been presented. So I've got some new stories to share that I haven't really shared to public. So I always set that intention that I need to be vulnerable, show my vulnerability, be felt in my vulnerability, be it at an event, be it at a retreat, or be it just the one-on-one stuff or in a course, because I know that really opens like good rapport and a heart connection, and then gives the space to someone to be vulnerable too. Because on this journey, if you are intending to grow, even though I think growth is unless you totally switch off and just plug into the matrix. But I think growth, everyone tuning in here, you're all growth driven, even if you don't recognize that yet. Growth can come in many forms, but you need to be vulnerable consistently. Simple. Be vulnerable with yourself. The thoughts that come up for yourself, like own them. Be vulnerable with your partner, your wife, your husband, without coming from a victim too, from a poor me. And that's the fine line. And it's not like this happened to me, I'm being vulnerable and sharing it, but then not being open to let go of that as a story and like sort of create a new story. And I think that's the difference as well between probably, you could say, followers and leaders. I think the leadership comes from the heart, and I think it definitely comes from leading with the heart and being vulnerable, but from a powerful place, from an intentional place, from a like, I'm sharing this with you because not only has this been something that I've overcome, I'm jumping in head first into what comes next, and I'm happy to share it with everyone because I know that's a way to lead.
Steve, this thing about the heart is just crucial, mate. I mean, I am so resonating with this right now. I mean, I'm going to share my my vision and my purpose with you, my personal vision and my personal purpose, right? And so my vision is, I am the light that awakens leaders to higher self-realization. Now the purpose, I empower leaders to be in heart-led conscious flow. The heart, it's about the heart, because that's where your true higher self resonates from. That's the electromagnetic energy that is the most powerful form of energy, and that is the purity of self, right? When you're really connecting from the heart, you're connecting from the purity of your light, of your love. And, boy, this planet needs it. And, when you just said that, I just went, oh, man, you haven't said that to me before, Steve. And it's just like, wow, now we're talking. This is the game, right? He's tapped into source. And so this is the work you're doing with men and women, How are you structuring this work? How do you go about doing this work?
Well, it's interesting. I was sitting down because I'm about to start doing a local community thing here with a good mate of mine who's a coach as well. We're going to do a lot of breath work and body work and stuff for men on the beach. And I'm sitting with it. I'm like, we're going to come up with I've got a process for this, but I'm teaming up with another guy. I'm like, oh, what are we going to bring together so we're in harmony instead of him doing his shit and mine doing mine? And in that process of sitting down with it, I'm looking like, what is my method? What do I do with people? What do I take? Because I've embodied a lot of tools and I've learned and embodied a lot of modalities, and I really just trust my intuition with clients when they come to me, what they need to either help them release, heal, empower, move forward, achieve goals, whatever. But if I was to break it down into a strategy, I have a big focus, and I shifted to this about 2.5 years ago. Always used to be this start of like, let's go into their problems. Let's help them with their problems and all this. And I'm like, well, you focus more on the problems. They're relevant and they're going to have to let go of them and shift out of them. But I'm like, I made this shift about 2.5 years ago to go, okay, no matter what this person comes to me with, it doesn't even matter if it's like hardcore abuse or sexual abuse or anything. It doesn't matter. I want this person to focus like, what do you want your reality to be like? Like, let's be real here. Let's focus on that. Let's start on that. And it's fascinating when I made this shift. That still brings up all their shit. So it's not like we're avoiding their stuff, but by giving them the tools to create a clear picture of how they want their kingdom, I resonate with the word kingdom or queendom to be, then we can go, okay, cool. There it is. You've laid it out there. Why aren't you there yet? And then them sort of questions, then we will go back, see where they're at. Then we can start to go, okay, you're there. And I did watch a video of yours where you sort of broke it down. You've got some, can't remember the abbreviations, the 3-letter thing to go from one place to another, and the strategies in the middle.
CVS to BVS.
That's the one. I was getting all malfunctioned. I got it.
The CVS, just so for people who may have been watching this for the first time, the CVS is the current version of the situation, and the BVS is a better version of the situation, which is 10 times the CVS. So it's a big, we're talking about a big jump forward. And then underneath that, you have the plan to get there. And the whole idea of the CVS is, how do I summarize what the CVS is in just a couple of bullet points? So you've got to go through a period of synthesizing all that stuff down to the core insights, right? Then the same for the BVS, which is the CVS by 10, right? This is 10x thinking we're talking about. And then what's the plan? What am I going to do? What's the actions? People call it strategy. It's just, what am I going to do to get there, right? And so it's a very simple way of thinking about, how you get from where you are, from where you are to where you want to be, which you're talking about the kingdom. How do I get from where I am in this state of being to getting to the kingdom, this state of being, or the queendom, whatever you want to call it? And what's my plan to get there? And so is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, basically, it's the same thing. And the most important part when we're creating that kingdom or queendom, that image, that picture, dot points, is the feeling attached to that. What does that feel like?
It's all about the emotions. It's all about the emotions.
Connecting to having that now. And a lot of people really struggle to access that. That's the thing. So then you're giving them whatever tools I use. Again, I've done a lot of trauma-based work, a lot of NLP, hypnotherapy, whatever modality or tool that I feel intuitively is going to help them shift through to get a clearer picture of that, to really attach to the feeling they want that to feel like, and then feel it, because that's the only way they're going to accomplish it. Then I'll come back. Where are they now? Okay, here's the map, here's the plan, or here's the strategy. And it's either accountability, it's either really close in support on that journey, leading them to their own awarenesses. That's in the coaching. I never tell people what they're going to do or what they're going to get out of it. It's always leading them into scenarios, so they can piece together that on the path, and that path could be anything. That's why a strategy seems really rigid. I don't resonate with strategy.
No, neither do I. It's an old world 3D corporate word. It's not a good word. It's a bad word.
Yeah. No, but this path, the flow, like you mentioned the word flow.
The pathway.
As long as you're grounded and disciplined, and you've got practices to keep you in there, because I'm massive on discipline and practices, and you need them on the journey. Without them, if a challenge comes up, you're going to go, whoa, and you're going to start to forget about the kingdom or the queendom. So that's how I just take people on that journey.
There's another thing. I just want to focus in on this because it really interests me about the way you go about doing things here, Steve. One of the points that I'm drawing out of what you just said is you have a toolkit of things like NLP or hypnotherapy or, whatever you use, right? Doesn't really matter. Could be philosophy, could be anything, whatever your toolkit is. And then you pick from that toolkit to use with the person depending on what they need, right? And so it's very tailored, the work you do with people. That's number one. That's really important. Number two is you're helping people to understand what their vision of their ideal future is, which is a reality they can manifest if they know how. You're just giving them the tools to be able to do that. I always look at envisioned futures or, future pacing, if you want to use the NLP term or whatever those things are. But it's what does my reality look like that is real and true that I want to manifest? And Steve, how are you going to help me to do that, right? And then that's the work you do. You say, I can, and by the way, I've always said this to leaders, the person with the problem is usually the person with the solution, right? And great coaches know how to help people to empower them. You've used this word before, embody them, to be able to find their solutions that work for them to get them to that ideal kingdom, queendom, right? And so what you're doing is kind of this beautiful guidance and support and, the person that's saying, you can do this and I can provide you with things that you need that are going to help you, because when you're talking about the disciplines, you have got to do it, right? I can't do it for you. You've got to do it. I'm going to empower you. It's, really, it's actually, I'm going to help you to empower yourself to be able to do this work with the disciplines and all that sort of stuff, to take yourself on that journey. Because, I always kind of look at it like this, at the end of the day, I can't do it for you. You got to do it for yourself. And what I can do is show you the pathway. I love that way, the pathway. But you've got to really kind of choose what's right for you, and you've got to be able to feel it using your intuition. And then you've got to step in, and here's the big one. Joko Willink, or whatever his name was, wrote about this, called extreme ownership. You've got to take responsibility and do it. Ricardo Bossi is on about this right now. Step up and be a leader and do the work. Take the responsibility, get in the breach and do the work. But, all of us, and I think more of us, going to realize that we need people like you, Steve, who's going to help us to be that guidance, that kind of support mechanism that has got a toolkit there that can release that toolkit to us and show us the way to go forward so that we can realize our true higher source self, our light, our love, right, as our true self. And then we'll get to the point where we kind of go, we actually don't need anybody now because we are whole. We're whole, right? And when you're whole, imagine a planet of 8 billion people who are whole as their true self. Could you imagine that? It's going to happen. Wow. It's happening. It's happening.
Yeah. Wow.
Steve, is there any final things you want to say before we close off for people watching?
Oh, final things. I think the main thing and keeping it into leadership, and I see this a lot with people. I'm not a leader. No, I'm not that person, and all this sort of stuff. That's all bullshit, number one. And if you can take that responsibility and look at yourself, and I like how you word complete ownership, use that. I'm big on radical responsibility.
Love it.
But if you've got, it's the first step. If you don't take radical responsibility for your entire reality right now, like, what, you're just going to pick and choose. I'm responsible for that achievement, but no, not that thing that's dark and heavy. You're gonna like tiptoe your way forward and be 2 steps forward, 4 steps back. And so you got to take radical responsibility for everything. Everything. I've got a good book recommendation, Busting Loose from the Money Game. Don't know if you've read it or listened to it.
Busting Loose from the Money Game. Who's the author?
I can't remember.
but it's easy to search, right?
100%. Yeah, look for Busting Loose from the Money Game. This is. There's a lot in there. You need to listen to it or read it a couple of times. But that's going to dive deeper into what we were talking about, like with quantum physics and all that too. But in there, it literally portrays you got to just everything in your hologram. You've created that. everything. So if you've created it, you have to be radically responsible. And I think people who have got in their head the stories coming up around, well, I'm not really a leader, or I can't do anything more. If that's up to other people, I'm just little old me. You got to ask yourself, is that my truth? Is that actually my truth? Now, don't listen to your head. And a lot of people are going to go, but I can't shut up my thoughts. Well, this is where you need some of the tools to be like, okay, how can I calm this down? How can I come into the heart? And whether it's moving the body, whether it's taking up a discipline, and martial arts. I love martial arts because of that, and like the masters in that, because it takes a lot of discipline. Anything that brings you into your heart and body, and then ask, okay, am I not good enough, or am I not a leader? What does your heart say? And I can just about guarantee you that each and every one of you, at some, whatever it looks like, you are a leader. And I say that to everyone, whether you're leading yourself through life. You can only lead yourself through life. Whether you're leading,
because Steve, if you're not doing it, who's doing it? You're being led by the government, really? You're being led by the media, really? Is that what you want? Yeah, I agree.
That's the unconscious. So
the unconscious, yeah, it is leading my life, right? No, hold on a minute. We've got to, I'm with you 100%. We've got to step up and take back control of ourselves and lead ourselves first, and then be equipped to lead our family and our friends and anybody else who's leaning in is interested, right?
100%. Yeah. And you mentioned their government and all these. We've had this false, deceptive social programming from what it is to be a leader. Be it, I say this, it's big with men. Like, what have we really got as energetic models for men in society for the last 40 or 50 years? Like the Pope, prime ministers, fucking.
They're all exposed. We know now.
Come on, seriously, we energetically modeled that shit, and this is where we're at now. We have this opportunity to basically, as they're on the way out and their deceptions and their distortions and everything are coming to the surface.
Yeah,
we have this opportunity just to be the leader that we have now. We have the opportunity. And I see that, and we get to create. I do this as a father. Like, I'm literally running blind as a father. I don't know what's in front of me. I'm just trusting my intuition, and I'm doing my best. And I know that I'm being modeled by my son off that, by me doing my best. Like, and I'm fine with that. And I know that's going to set my son up to be better than I was. You could say that, not right or wrong, because he's had a better energetic model. Again, my way is not right. It might not be the best, but I know I'm doing my best. And I think that's far better than like the models we've had in society going forward. Yeah.
Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. I know everybody viewing this video is going to love hearing what you've had to say, because it's truth. I see it as truth. How can people contact you, Steve, if they want to be able to work with you?
Yeah, cool. So you said before that I generally tailor people coming to work for me for the person, for the individual. I haven't really run retreats and everything for a while. With 2023, I do have a big men's one happening. But to get in contact with me personally through my socials is the best way. I could drop my links in below this video.
Look, why don't you give me those, and I'll drop them in. Just one link so that people can catch up with you, and I'll put it below in the description. So if anybody wants to catch up with Steve, have a bit of a chat, and find out what the options are for them to work with him as a coach, I would highly recommend Steve X. We didn't get to ask you what the X means, by the way. What's the X mean?
So it's interesting. I've got a really good mate of mine, one of my best mates, called Clint X Morgan, and I used to give him crap about this. Now, he's big on numerology and numbers, and I was always like, him and his wife, they got X. I'm like, what does it mean? I'm like, I don't understand this. And I'm like, that's generally how it starts with mates. You give them a bit of banter and you take the piss a little bit. And he didn't take it personally. He's like, I'll do your name. I'm like, what do you mean? And he's got because he's got his own numerologist he goes to, and he literally lives his life around numerology, and he has an exceptional life. He's helping a lot of people. It's successfully.
By the way, Steve, you should know that my wife is a numerologist and tarot.
Ask her.
And you, no, I do all the time. Everything you know what? It comes down to this, Steve. When she talks and gives me insights through the cards or through the numerology, I listen and I apply. And, I'll tell you another story quickly. When we got married, she kind of said to me, Victoria's Russian, right? When we got married, she said, Victoria Campbell, she did the numbers on it and she said, nah, not taking your name. And I said, why not? And she said, the numbers are not right. And she said, I'm going to keep my birth name. And I said, Phil, fine. Totally agree. No problem. If that's what works with the numerology, I completely agree with you. So keep the story going.
So he typed it in and he's just put an X. So my name is Stephen, but only my mum calls me that. And it's like, no one calls me that.
No.
So he typed in the X straight up and he's like, oh. And he typed in my name, how it was, like my middle name's Daniel. And he's like, oh, this means you work really hard with no real result. What he spoke to me was like a description of how I'd operated in my life. I'm like, oh, don't like that. What are the options? He typed in X and it means all the people I help get great results or something, and I live an abundant, impactful life. And it had this description. I'm like, I want that. So I just like, I'm going to have an X in front of my name, in the middle of my name. And I just chose. And it just felt good. And that's how the X came about.
Oh, I love that. I'm really glad I asked that question, actually. I wasn't going to ask you, but I'm really glad I did, because it opens people up to the significance of numerology and tarot in our lives. That's number one. That's really important. And number two, now let me ask you this. Final question, just a yes or no answer. Just a yes or no answer. When you changed to the X, did you move into abundance? Did you move into that kind of way of being?
Not overnight, but I've had probably the most abundant, successful year I've ever had.
There you go. That'll do. Steve X McNamara, what a pleasure to talk to you. You're a man amongst men, helping men and women to get back to be aligned back to their true higher self, their real self. What a joy to talk to you. Thank you, Steve. I appreciate you being with us.
Thanks, Glenn. Really, really appreciate your time, and a great interview too. Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff. Bye now, mate.